Hi everybody, it's Allison Durant coming to you from my studio here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I thought I would start my video by pulling a card from my art poetry deck. So I'm gonna just give this a little shuffle and we'll see what we get. And today I'm gonna be showing you some mini art journals that I have created, and I used paintings that were sort of unfinished practice pieces that were on lightweight paper, and I had done a video where I painted over a bunch in rainbow colors, and I want to show you what the result of that project was. And so the card for today is be open to new opportunities. So I'm just gonna kind of leave you with that, and we are gonna start my video. Okay, so if you have been following me, you know that we did a video where I had painted over paintings that I had started on lightweight paper. And so you can just see I tried to put a little bit of a solid color over top what was underneath. And these are just cutouts of the paper. So this again was about 90 to 98 pounds, quite lightweight. And instead of just having these paintings that were unfinished sit around, these practice pieces, I had taken a like an old hotel card, a credit card, and I'd gone over top with mostly a solid color or a couple solid colors of the same hue to get this kind of rainbow-like coverage. And we're sort of repurposing pieces on paper for collage and for these mini art journals if you're interested, because this is something that I had just created a couple days ago out of those papers, and it's so simple. So it's just this little journal, and you can see all my painted papers. I have it upside down. I did a little black cover. This cover is in slightly thicker paper. So if you have been following me, you'll know that we had done I took a palette and I had smushed it on black paper as my background, and I got this beautiful, beautiful texture and gorgeous colors over top of the black. And these would be wonderful flowers if I cut them out and collaged them on, although I just wanted to take an extra piece and use it as the textured, use it to add some texture to the cover of my little mini art journal. So that is where that black paper came from. And when this opens up, so I haven't started to fill the journal, but I sort of went in rainbow colors, so reds and pinks. Oops, where am I? I'm going backwards. Here we go. This is the way it opens, and it's almost like an accordion. So I have red, orange, yellow. You can see all of the old painting underneath, old drawings, and it just gives me so much sort of like a place of exploration and play, and a starting point, a jumping off point for new work in a little mini journal. And I love the idea of taking this little journal with me traveling. I know what would be great if I had time would be to add, like, glue a little button or one of those little circular fasteners and use a beautiful piece of string or something, or embroidery floss. So that's what I have to do instead of my elastic. And yeah, I just thought I'd show you how this came out. It's not really fastened in, like you can pull it right out. You can draw on the other side as well, but I just love how it folds up so nicely. This is the other one that I had started working on. And this one I was starting to put color palettes that I loved in this little book. So this first color palette, especially this side, these are colors I use all the time in my work. I started to do some mark making with a white fine Posca paint pen, so you can see the polka dots. And I wrote down all of the names of these colors on that back side. And this is, again, the white side. I can see some of my son's art in here. I made one for him as well. And then there's those painted papers in all colors of the rainbow in sort of an accordion fashion. And I just love these little journals. So what I'm going to do is start using them and doing, you know, mark making, and when I'm out and about, grabbing the book and just writing in them, writing inspiration, you know, from my walks in nature or from a recent art video. And I want to show you how I did these. So if you were to look at this closely, you can put as many pages as you like in here, but the strip of paper that I had used, so if you're just looking at this red, I left about an inch where I glued it to the other side of the next paper. And each paper is just glued with about an inch to the paper that's adjacent to it. So it took me a while to kind of figure out a good rhythm for this. And I'll just show you. So if you're wanting to make a journal like this, you can really use any size paper. I find the longer paper tends to work best. I was pulling a lot of paper that was 90 to 98 pounds, and lengthwise, this is 9 by 12 inches. So these, I kind of took the width of the, let me just see if I have my ruler. So this purple paper, let's just see. I'm really not into measuring things. I am not into perfection. I just sort of, I guess. Okay, that's about 10 inches across. That's a really, really great length. 10 inches across, and I like mine to be, this is just a little over 3 inches. 3.5 would be good as well. So about 10 inches wide for your strips of paper, and about 3 inches, depending on how wide you want your book. You could go up to 3.5 or 4 inches. And just cutting up old paintings of that lightweight paper. And again, I had painted over mine in solid colors, and then gluing them together just with a slight overlap of about, I think about an inch. But since I have my ruler here, yeah, that's about an inch. And so what I'm going to show you, this is when I started to glue together. So you take your strip. I'll take this red one, for instance. And what you do is you fold down about an inch, like that. It's not even, but it doesn't really matter. I'm absolutely not into, again, perfection or having the exact measurements. My books are very irregular and I like them like that. I just don't have the patience to do it differently. So when you fold down, you're basically going to fold down about 1 inch on the end of each piece, so each strip. And I find it helpful just to do that right away. So I'm just going to fold down a bunch of strips, just approximately 1 inch being folded downward on whichever side you want. Doesn't really matter. You can see how uneven, like this is really uneven, but I just don't care. There's one more here. Okay, so you can put them in an order if you like. I'm just going to kind of mix up my order. And then for the cover, you want to have paper that's 140 pounds, so thicker. Because this little cover, this paper is probably about 138 pounds, this black paper. So what I'm going to do now is glue these together. So I'll just start with this particular one here. Okay, so what I did is, this is one I was working on, so I'm just going to fold down that edge because this one's already attached. And I'm going to glue. I use this Yoo-hoo stick. You can use any glue, but this one seems to work just fine. And I like how it goes on blue and then it dries clear. This is so when I work with my son, we can see where we're gluing. And then you're going to take this next page and just go right over top of that 1-inch strip. So you can see here, this is the 1-inch. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but this is the crease. So you're just overlapping the page and gluing it on, and then you can see with the bend, and this is where it helps if you kind of move this around, warm it with your hands, just to get that glue to hold down. Okay, so that's another strip that we've added. And then I'm gonna see where this edge is folded under here. You're gonna take your next paper, pull that edge out, put glue on it. And you're gonna kind of slide it over that crease. You can see the overlap here. I like to push it down in a few different ways, warm it with my finger. I really love art journals and I love the idea of homemade art journals, but I'm very impatient. And I also really love to reuse materials that I may not be using that I have at home in my studio. So all of these beautiful painted papers, there's so much potential, and I think I'll get a lot of use out of them as these little inspiration journals. Okay, so I'm gonna pull that page over. Here's my next crease in this next long strip, and going right over top of the painted area here with my glue. I'm gonna add whatever color I want. Maybe this turquoise, this is such a beautiful color. Going over top of that strip. And then it has a bend, right? And so this is a really basic way to make an accordion journal. I don't know the proper name. I think some people call it a concertina journal. And I just sort of really have enjoyed this process because I, again, don't like measuring. I don't mind stitching, but you know, it just takes a lot more time. I love the look of stitching in my art journals. And maybe when time frees up in the future, I will get back to that kind of journaling. So I'm just gluing on a whole bunch of pages here. And once you have a whole bunch on, I'm just gonna kind of stop there because I have quite a few hanging off my desk. You're gonna fold them together in a way that kind of they naturally want to fold. I'm gonna go to the beginning. And this first one wants to fold. I'm gonna fold it this way. Let me think, is that how I did it? I mean, you can really fold it whatever way you want, but I'm basically folding the strip in half one way, and then I'm taking the next page, doing the same thing, the next one, which this one's a lot longer, and you can see I don't care about the length. And if you kind of take a peek to see what it looks like, you get that accordion look. So again, you push the strip in and then you gather up the ones that you've already folded in half, and then you push down and kind of make a crease, and then bring the next one underneath and then match it up, fold it down. And the reason I was thinking about this, I kind of stumbled on this. I mean, I love art journals. I often buy them and they're pricey. At least the ones I buy, they usually have acid-free paper, 140-pound paper or up. I buy a lot of watercolor journals, and I really was excited about making my own with these old paintings. There's so many reasons for that, but one of them was I had been watching an artist online paint gorgeous florals with these bright backgrounds. And I also have followed many artists that I really love florals over a solid colored background. And I thought, well, how can I practice this when, you know, a few of the artists had purchased art journals with colored pages. So like one color would be, you know, just a full bright red. The next color would be a light blue, really high quality paper and colored backgrounds. So toned paper. And I noticed they discontinued some of the ones that the artists were using. And I thought, well, how can I just make my own colored backgrounds, colored papers for art journaling and exploring? So when I'm ready to paint a canvas, say, you know, being inspired by this gorgeous fuchsia purple color, I mean, just looking at this makes me really happy. It brings me joy. And if I wanted to experiment with mark making and art supplies over top, seeing what works, what doesn't, you know, going on a walk, finding inspiration in nature, maybe drawing a flower, I'll be more confident when I pull out my canvas or my large wood panel if I do decide to paint with that solid background color. So we have this, again, this accordion journal, and the very last page is when I put on my thicker cover. And I purposely made this one slightly longer. This is about 12 inches, I believe. So you just, if your pages are, say, 10 inches, you know, remember that there's about an inch folded over. So this particular page would have been 8 inches. Making sure that you go well beyond. So yeah, about 12 inches if all your pages were 10 inches when you cut them out. And so we're going to glue on the last page where we have that fold. We're going to glue the cover over top, just like we did the other pages. And this is such a great activity to do with kids. So I did this with my son when he came home from school yesterday. And I was actually trying to find his art journal because he's already started to draw. He was putting Mario characters in it. He really enjoyed that Mario movie. That brings me back to my younger days when I had a Nintendo and even an Atari and did video games when I was younger. And it's neat to see him drawing those little characters in a homemade journal. And I think it will be really fun years later for him and I to kind of look back at it and just see what we were up to. And again, using some of my old paper and not going out and buying anything, but just using what I have, which is something I'm not very good at and I'm working on, is, you know, repurposing and using what I have before buying something. And so here we have this beautiful, beautiful cover. Now I'm trying to figure out I'm just going to, this is actually quite long, but that's okay. So I'm just going to fold this right over and go like that. I think this would be amazing to trade with someone, like doing a trade. I love art journals. If somebody put their heart and soul into an art journal, especially a miniature one, I just feel like it's so cool to see, you know, colors that people might choose, textures, mark making, what makes it authentic to them. I just think that's amazing. So, you know, being able to kind of really finish these and popping them in the mail, I think is a really neat, just a neat project, kind of like an artist trading card. So you have, again, you can decide how you want to close your journal. I'm not going to get into options on that, but there are a ton of ways to do that. You can just look online and I, though, am just so excited to start doing mark making in here. You can even glue down, you know, for instance, this page right here. But yeah, you might have better ideas. This is just the idea. And again, it's just so simple, it's fast, and it's fun. So what we could do is start with my intention for this, which was mark making on the pages to see what art supplies might look good with this, you know, more solid color background. And that's how I want to use my art journal. You can use your art journal however you wish, of course. You may have some different ideas. I also love, I was saying to my son, if he wants to do some drawing and some mark making just on plain white paper on the back pages, that's an option. And if he just really wants to paint over top of a colored background, this is pretty neat. This already has so much texture and interest. But, you know, I just, yeah, I can't wait to start with you. I think I'm going to start with probably this little journal. And starting on the first page, this beautiful, beautiful red. Let me just see. Or the last page, right? I think it could be either way. I think I'll just start here. So I'm just going to pull this out to work on it. It's also kind of neat to see what you might be working on adjacent to this particular color. So if you needed to, you could block out this page if you find it distracting. So I'm just going to, though, work on this red. Just going to move my book. And let me just think. There's a few things I wanted to do today. Oh, I did have another idea. Okay, I'm going to start with, so I need to just focus on the first idea. So I love using different mark making supplies over top of colored backgrounds. And I'm really into florals. I'd like to try to figure out, okay, what mark making supplies would I like over top of a red background? And because I've been painting for a while, I kind of have an idea. Although I just want to almost record some supplies in here that might be a jumping off point. So what I might do is, okay, I'm gonna start with, I love wax crayons. I love Stabilo Woodies. So Stabilo Woodies are great for adults, kids. They are wonderful water-soluble crayons in a stick. They have many different purposes, and I'm just going to show you an example. So I don't use a lot of purple in my work, but I think it would be really cool to incorporate purple. And I know if I put purple over top of this, it would probably show up pretty well. So I'm just going to do this mark and just get some color down. So that is, it's like a dark purple. I don't know if maybe that number 385 is the color. I don't know. It's a dark purple anyway. They have a slightly lighter purple, 370. Just looking here, and maybe I'll just add that on. And that one, it just doesn't show up quite as nicely, but it's giving me an idea on mark making as well. I know that red and green are complementary colors. I know that I love this turquoise over top of this background. I love this V shape. So this is just using this water-soluble crayon over top of a solid red acrylic paint background. That is so gorgeous. I know that if I did a large painting with a red background, I definitely would want to incorporate that color. And what I was wanting to show you, again, these are water soluble. So if we just went over to our plain paper here, And we put down this beautiful color. It shows up better on the white, right? Versus here, because there's more contrast with the white background and this gorgeous plum. So I'm going to take my watercolor brush and just show you, because it's water soluble, it's activated by water. Isn't that just gorgeous? And the higher the quality paper, the less of the mark underneath you'll see. But I don't mind that. You can also blend the colors. So say I wanted to blend in an orange. That just gives me a really neat effect. And let's just do another one. Maybe we want to add in. We'll just put down this beautiful apple green. And, you know, this is just almost like exploring what marks, what colors, what supplies you love in a journal format. I used quite a bit of water on there. And I'm going to add in that kind of peachy color. And maybe this beautiful blue, and I'm going right into where it's still wet. And that's kind of neat too, because you're just discovering different ways of using the supplies. These are great supplies to travel with because they are in a stick, but you can activate them with water. So if you love to do watercolor, it's just a great option if you want to travel light. You could take your little homemade accordion journal like we did today. And I'm just going to dry this a bit more because I'm going to turn it over and be working on the other side with you all. But, you know, maybe you use this backside as some kind of exploration as well. Maybe for an image you want to draw or transfer, or maybe just note-taking, sort of like how in this particular one, I just wrote down all of the colors that I loved. And that is how I'll remember that front page. That's quite wet. I also wanted to just say, so if you are, you know, going to take this to a canvas, if you put down a mark you didn't like with these water-soluble crayons, you could blend it out like this, or you could, you know, even remove it altogether. But I'm kind of liking this effect. I'm loving that purple watercolor over top of the red paint, and how it's going to dry, I'm not sure, but I just really, really like that. And so, you know, I can also show you where there's not as much contrast. You could add the same color as your background, but you could get like a really subtle variation just to make it more interesting, almost as like, say, an underlayer. You can see that. But if you were to take that over to this page, you would get more contrast because this is a lighter background. So just exploration. And because I liked that turquoise, I'm just trying to decide, you know, I might go with, again, red and green are complementary colors. They look great together. They are both very powerful, so you may not want a lot of them in the same work. But if I was just to say maybe doing some mark making that I might be interested in, like some kind of irregular green circles and pushing down quite firmly, experimenting with the wet part of the page and the dry part, and, you know, being able to look back on this and being like, you know, maybe I don't like that apple green on the red, but I love that turquoise on the red. So exploration. maybe going over top or coloring in the circles with something a bit like a different mark making tool and just seeing what you get. So today I was like, I wonder what I'm gonna do on video, because I don't do any editing and I just kind of go with random inspiration. But having this little journal is, again, a starting off point for me as well, because I'm really starting to have fun and play and relax, and that's what art should be all about. So this is just exploration. It's not trying to create a finished piece. And I'm gonna let this little area dry. I'm also gonna show you, if I want to work with, say, another mark making supply like water soluble pencils, or say I have here my bronze Posca pen. So maybe just, oh, that really shows up nicely. I like that a lot. And I know just from experience that I don't want to go over top with an acrylic paint pen over this crayon. It might work, but it might wreck my pen because it's just more of a waxy, water-soluble material versus that plasticky acrylic finish. I'm still learning how to layer with mixed media because there's just so many supplies. But this is a bronze medium point Posca pens, one of my favorite Posca pens. And I'm just going with slightly irregular marks in a way that feels interesting to me. Try not to go over, this is dry so I can go over it, but you don't want to put Posca paint pen over top of a wet area or it will wreck the pen. So I really like that. I'm also just maybe craving some white. And what do I have? I love polka dots. Maybe doing some polka dots in this area here. So we're just, again, doing marks that we might find interesting. We're exploring them, and we're using color to almost help inform our decision making about what supply we want to use and what colors we might want to use. If all you have, use what you have. If you just have, say, pencil can be really interesting over acrylic backgrounds or just plain paper. So you could just have a plain journal where you can use pencil or, a really affordable permanent black pen. I just noticed my gold Uniball Signo pen, and that would be another great mark making tool over top. Red and gold are really beautiful, and I might just go with kind of some thin, almost like half circles or rainbows, and going right over the crease of the page. I find that interesting. And then just deciding if I like it, how does it feel working with this pen? Maybe you just purchased a supply, or you have a supply sitting at home in the drawer and you just want to explore using it. This is a great way to use it. So I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to flip over to my other journal just so I don't smudge this. So the other one, this is the one that we just made, which is kind of cool. And instead of working on the red background, let's just go to this gorgeous blue. So I left some of the watercolor paper, most of this is acrylic paint, but I'm just gonna kind of get down some orange for interest. My water-soluble Stabilo Woody. And I could just leave it like this, but I want to activate it with water. Not get it too wet, but kind of go into the areas of the paper where I didn't use the acrylic and just seeing what that looks like. This area I think is more watercolor, and just making it more interesting. and relaxing while I'm doing it. Because I recently did those V shapes, I really love those. I immediately am drawn to this red, sort of the reverse. So on here I have the red background with this gorgeous number 470 turquoise Stabilo Woody. And I'm gonna go over top of this. I'm gonna turn this upside down so I don't smudge it, and do the opposite. And just seeing how it feels. I'm going over fairly firmly and putting it on thick. And I feel like this is definitely more vibrant. Maybe I'm gonna grab that lighter orange and just go over one side with the lighter orange. Sometimes I do this in my artwork because I love just sort of that unexpected interest. So just, you know, if you added light yellow, that would be another way of it popping, maybe because I'm on camera here. So I like that. And, you know, going back, I love the look of thick lines with thin lines. Maybe I'll do a slightly thicker line here. This is what I have in front of me. This is a gray Posca, but I really, really like this light gray. It's actually not thick, so I take that back. I'm not gonna put a thick line, but I am gonna just decide, what do I want to do? You know, I didn't know if I'd like X's in my work, but recently I have seen them in other artists' works, like Ray Missigman. I had purchased some of her little mini paintings and I love them. She uses a lot of these little X marks. And I'm just deciding if I like that and if I like the gray over top of this blue. And I love the gray over top of this. It's almost like a cobalt turquoise or a dark teal. I really, really like that. And as I'm making these marks, I'm remembering that I love to do almost like bird footprints instead of the X. So kind of like a V with a little line and kind of moving around the art to make the eye move around. I remember liking that. So that's something I'm just gonna remind myself of here. And the gray is subtle over top of the turquoise, so just knowing that, but it also is a really beautiful kind of a neutral color. I think it would be a great neutral, you know, like a leaf on a beautiful flower. And, you know, just thinking of while we're experimenting, we could later cut up our journal and collage on parts of it that we love. We could cut these out and glue them onto artist trading cards. So this is just one step into a direction of using these old painted papers that we have. I feel like doing maybe some white on here. Just gonna shake up my pen and I'm gonna do maybe some really just kind of rounded shapes. I'm a little bit jittery today, and that's okay because it gives the shapes a bit more interest, and maybe overlapping them a little bit and seeing if I like that. I don't love that, but I'm glad that I did it, and so I probably wouldn't repeat that in my work. I like to add lines in it, so that's one way I can turn it into something that I like. So just doing some line work with my fine Posca paint pen. And I immediately like that better. And remembering that if you do something that you don't like, you can just paint right over it. So I'm gonna leave that to dry. Maybe I'll flip back to the orange page in this book. This is pretty dry now. And I really, really liked, again, the V's. Maybe I'm going to try and repeat that over here. And what color would really stand out? I could try the turquoise again just to see. And it does stand out quite nicely. Maybe I want to try this purple. And I like that. I find that an interesting composition where the bend in the page is right here and it's kind of working on both sides. I don't like those red marks. I find them distracting and not that enjoyable, so I'm just gonna get rid of them and bring in that color a little bit. And again, art journaling, what I just did here when I removed the water-soluble crayon because I didn't like it, I know a lot of artists, work with chalk first. They, instead of, using pencil and an eraser, if you think about, having a canvas or a wood panel with acrylic paint, you can use chalk. And I had some really, oh, here it is. This is really, really fine chalk, but you can use any chalk. And, if this is a large canvas and you are just wanting to kind of sketch out an idea, you would at least have a way of, if you didn't like what you drew, you can just get rid of it. So chalk is awesome. And so is the water-soluble crayon. Because not only can you try on the design and the image, but you can try on the color. And if you don't like it, you can remove it. So that's just an example of how art journaling, it'll bring more confidence to you when you do decide to work at a larger scale. So many benefits to art journaling. I'm just trying to decide what I want to do here. I'm curious to know if I could add I kind of want to add a bright pink right above here. So I'm going to grab, I had purchased some watercolor brush pens, which I'm not that familiar with. These are by Koi. And I'm just going to see how they go on in this area that has a little bit of watercolor paper. Oh, and I love actually that color when it is over top of the acrylic. I think that's really interesting. So that's kind of, again, exploring and seeing how this pink actually just changed the color of this turquoise V. So I don't know if that would ruin, just because they're not wet, I don't want to ruin this little brush pen by going over top of the water-soluble crayon. Just because it's still, it's water soluble, but it's still in sort of that wax thick format. So I'm gonna behave myself and kind of go around it. But, oh yeah, see, there we go. Okay. It just kind of went purple there. I don't know if you can see that. And it's still working, so that's good. But I love how it's almost like this little peekaboo, these windows of that bright orange. That's really cool. And I'm all of a sudden really wanting to add maybe some little pink flowers in this area and doing that background technique with a different color watercolor brush, like a brush pen. So I'm gonna grab a pink pencil crayon. This one doesn't show up too well. Let's just try another one. Maybe this raspberry by Carandosh. Doesn't show up super well. So again, this is learning, right? That the water-soluble pink pencil crayon doesn't go as well over this bronze acrylic background. So I might go with a pink Posca pen. Just see what I have. Oh, I have it here. So this is Pink Rose in a bullet-shaped medium point, this Japanese acrylic paint pen. And that was that pink that I was looking for. And I'm just gonna add that in a few places because I like it. Reminds me of just these beautiful spring tulips. And I'm moving on to the next page. And I really like the marks underneath from when I tried this pencil. And so again, just playing with different materials and maybe adding in some of this lighter turquoise Stabilo that doesn't show up too much on the turquoise there. I imagine this would probably really show up well on here. I kind of feel like adding it in up here as like a background color. And that gives me really interesting texture without adding water to it. Let's just add water and see what we get. So I don't want it too wet because I want to work on it with you, but I just sort of tinted the background there, and I really like that. It's almost like I want to add black mountains with my permanent black pen in here. I'll try this Lumo Color Permanent black pen. This is Stetler. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And without making sure this is, I want to make sure it's not wet. I'm just really feel like this has a bit of an angled chisel tip. And I'm just gonna, because I'm in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, the mountains are in my backyard. I'm very spoiled. And I just kind of want to add that in, and again, see how I like my pen. I went right over to the next page, which I find very interesting, and I can always come back to this, and you know, if I like to use a certain varnish, I can practice over top of this area, you know, because if I had this on canvas, I wouldn't want to wreck the whole thing by experimenting with varnish. So an art journal is a great place to experiment with varnish. And again, pulling this further and just deciding, what do I want to work on today? This is really, really beautiful. Maybe I want to add in some kind of flowers, abstract flowers. So I'm pushing down really hard, making irregular marks. And this is that gorgeous dark purple, which I don't use in a lot of my work, but I love it here. And I'm going to add a little bit of a yellow center and maybe a bit of a light yellow and blend it just to see what that does with that purple. And I don't love the way that blended, so I'm just going to go over top of it again. And then I'm going to use maybe a water-soluble crayon that might stand out. I feel like using orange. Oh, this is a Derwent Inktense pencil, which I have not used very often. And I never would have thought of using this over top of acrylic paint, but I'm loving the orange, how vibrant it is. So there we have that gorgeous little flower, and then I'll put this flower kind of hanging down here with similar leaf marks. I'm gonna see if I can, without losing you all, bring you back, bring you closer. I wasn't sure what I was gonna do today. Oh, I'm gonna put on my light an extra light, a room light. It doesn't make a big difference. I have 3 wonderful studio lights, but that might be better just for you all to see. Sometimes I like to blend my crayons, and so I'm gonna grab, see if I have a red. Oh, this one is a Derwent Inktense pencil. These, when activated with water, I understand are extremely vibrant. They have many uses. This is Poppy Red, so Derwent, and just deciding if I like that. And then maybe in this area, I want to add some of the gorgeous turquoise and just see how does that, how do I want to see? Oh, wow, it's actually really vibrant. Kind of going over and around and behind this flower. And kind of draw outward onto the next page. So I really like the way that these Stabilo Woodies go over the dark green. And maybe I want to add another flower that's really vibrant. So I'm thinking I could add like a blue tulip maybe. And that's so nice. I want to repeat it. Just makes me think of Maud Lewis, beautiful artist from, I think it was Digby, Nova Scotia. I know it was Nova Scotia. I'm pretty sure it was Digby, and that folk artist, Maud Lewis, that had, I believe it was rheumatoid arthritis. I did see the movie with a movie on Maud Lewis. I think it's called, is it called Maudie? And I really, really love her work and how she powered through the pain of having very deformed fingers, hands, joints, and powered through with painting as sort of against all odds. And I'm totally sidetracking. Just, I think of Maud Lewis when I'm doing these tulips. Her work, I've always thought, when you look at it, it seems very basic folk art, but then I would try and paint something like her and I just cannot get it. And she really had this beautiful style that it's sad that she wasn't appreciated when she was here, and all the bullying that she had going on. It's very sad. I really want to add black next to that green. And again, just experimenting. I like that, so I'm just going to add a bit of black in the other area. And maybe I want to add some red, some smaller red flowers in here. So without intending to, I'm kind of doing almost like a little folk art scene here in my art journal, and it's all because of this green background and exploring the supplies that I have, which I know I have a lot. So, you know, I'm a full-time artist. I have a lot of supplies, and I know it's not accessible for a lot of people, but just use what you have. Oh, there's my awesome timer. I did not think I would be on here an hour, but I'm just gonna go get that timer. Excuse me for a second. Okay, so probably finish pretty soon. I'm just gonna add in a little bit more color here, and then I have to go. Maybe some peach, maybe another beautiful kind of peachy flower up here. And loving that you can blend these colors. I'll do a little bit of peach and pink. And maybe I'll add like an orange middle here. see how the white, I don't use this white, it works quite well. And I really love that green I use, so maybe adding in a little bit more green. Just the leaves, maybe overlapping there a little bit. And just some thicker green marks, just seeing if I like that. And maybe smudging them in with my finger, seeing what that looks like, which is kind of cool. Smudging in that top area. And I love those blue flowers. I'll put in another one here. And just emphasizing this bigger purple one. Maybe another purple one there. So yeah, I am gonna leave you with this little accordion journal, and I'll leave you with this cute little folk art painting. Well, folk art inspired. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining me for this video. I hope you consider painting over old papers, old paintings, thin paper, and piecing it together by gluing the edges, making it into a book that's easy for you. If you can go more elaborate and, you know, piece it together with a different type of you know, with sewing or whatever, I think that's awesome too. The possibilities are endless, but this is just a really great way to relax and use up supplies and get out of your head. Right now, I don't want to go because I just want to keep painting. And I'm just so grateful. Thank you for being with me today.